Hi and welcome to the London attack predicted and the road to the Great Conjunction 2020. On November 29, 2019 was world news a terrorist attack on the London Bridge, and in my previous prediction I announced that on this date was going to occur an astral synchronization due to planetary alignments that are completing events started in 2001 when the anti-terrorism war began and will reach climax in the Great Conjunction of 2020. I am the Grande, and this is the road to the Grand Conjunction of 2020 Astral. On November 29, Jupiter, the star of truth, began to become invisible in the sky, and in the Previs Prediction I anticipated that the passing of the stars through the constellation of the Scorpion would bring something related to the sting operations that involve conspiracies and terrorism, exactly as it was reflected in the news. In fact, I also included that 5 days before, something similar was going to happen, but involving the Moon and Venus, both female stars, in the sign of government, and in that moment was news that an American politician is actually a secret Middle Eastern spy. But I also clarified that by the 29th the themes of terror and death will also be reflected, followed by the resurrection of the Savior King and of darkness against light. And the attack involved knife murders like the Scorpion sting, saviors with a long horn like the long arrow of the constellation of the Archer who kills the Scorpion. The headlines said horror and heroes, and the episode ended with the supposed terrorist killed, restoring the power of the British Crown over evil, which shield have a big unicorn. Moreover, the great horn that one of the supposed heroes used was taken from a palace that was an old Masonic occult lodge, which are training schools for many of the government's authorities, which main lodge is in London, a few blocks away, and its base are astrological rituals as seen in its symbology. Even its famous eye of enlightenment are the constellations at each extreme of the Milky Way, where the alignment happened, which is called the Celestial River or Astral River, in sync with the episode that happened on the famous London Bridge that crosses the river. This astrological alignment happened in the sign of government law, reflected in the law and forces involved, and in the sign of foreign faith, reflected in the alleged religious fanaticism of the terrorists. In the north of the Milky Way was the sun that represents the father energy, in the Scorpion that symbolizes terror, reflected in the called terrorist with its supposed patriarchal religion. Then Venus and Jupiter, the star of salvation, were on the arrow of the Archer, reflected in the so-called heroes, and the Moon with Saturn and Pluto, stars of security, death and power, in the Archer's cape, reflected in the armed forces and in the victims who were operators of the justice system. In the astral picture you can see the monster surrounded by cavalry, exactly like in the news. There is more. This alignment was opposing the constellation of the Unicorn in the south of the Milky Way, that in those days had a meteor shower next to the constellation of the Hunter. This reflected in the so-called hero with the horn, and the stars made an important angle with Uranus that symbolizes explosive surprise, reflected in the terrorist supposedly wearing a fake bomb vest. And this star was in the constellation of the Whale, in sync with the horn that belonged to the narwhal or unicorn whale. And as if that were not enough, the fish and the unicorn were ancient symbols of Jesus the Savior, as can be seen in the painting that is even next to two dogs, like in the constellation, which is important because the planet Jupiter is the astral representation of Christ and rules the constellation of the Archer, who symbolizes spirituality, sacrifice and salvation. On the other hand, we also have numerological synchronization because, just like Jesus' sacrifice was on his 33 years of age, from November 29 there are only 33 days until the end of the year, when the first signs of the Great Conjunction will begin. 33 is also the number of vertebrae of the human spine, which in the Egyptian occultism was the astral energy channel that must be elevated in synchronization to the astrological cycles, which central column is the Milky Way, and is one of the main myths that inspire Masonic rituals, whose maximum grade is 33. just as Liber 33 is one of the most famous magic books of the occultist called The Beast, which created the modern magical currents that dominate world government and show business. In addition, 2019 is the 303rd anniversary of the first meeting of the 4 original lodges, and November 29 is the 333rd day of the year. So this date was a super time astral gate. Before finishing, you can see a clear visual picture without so much information explained, so you can see the simple synchronization. So pause for a moment and see for yourself the great astral show. Now finally we see the numerological astral magic of the date. 2 plus 9 is equal to 11, so 1129 equals 1111, in sync with the last 1111 prediction that you can see to check the timing between the astrological alignment of that day and the crisis in Bolivia, and adding each one of the numbers of the date of the attack is equal to 7, a master number in magic that you can see how it is used by Trump and the former director of the IMF. In fact, while I finish editing this video, there is news of a new supposed terrorist attack in Pearl Harbor. According to government theories, exactly 7 days after the attack in London, but although this day had no big alignment, it was 77 years and 11 months, the two master numbers we just saw, since the great attack in the same place that led America to World War II, and that many people have already pointed out as false. Moreover, that historic attack was just after a great conjunction of Jupiter with Saturn and Uranus in the Milky Way over the Unicorn, while Mars, the planet of war, was in the constellation of the Whale, and one of the submarines destroyed was named Narwhal, like the unicorn whale. Finally, we see the next astral doors of 1212 and 2112. In 1212, there is a cold full moon at 12:12 hour in the south of the Milky Way, in conjunction with the North Moon node and opposing Jupiter, the star of truth, that ends up becoming completely invisible just when one of the greatest censorship campaigns will begin on the internet, and when it can indicate a weakening of power until the beginning of 2020, when it will be visible again and the great conjunction completely begins. The numerological sum of the year is equal to 12, so the full moon equals 12, 12, 12 at 12, 12. And that date is the 6666 day, or 2/12 from the day of the attacks of 2001, when the moon was also in the south of the Milky Way in an almost inverted alignment between Jupiter and Saturn, but opposing Pluto, reversing what began almost 20 years ago. And 2112 is the solstice that begins the change of balance between light and shadow, and Jupiter joins the Sun in the north of the Milky Way, reigniting the energy of salvation. And 7 days later, just after the solar eclipse, in conjunction with Jupiter at Christmas, where there will be 6 astral bodies in the same constellation of fire and Earth sign, finally Saturn and Pluto will be only 1 degree away, closer than when the fire of Notre Dame happened. That was a sample of what is coming. But don't forget, 1212, 2112, and the great conjunction of 2020 are astral doors that are already open, which our spirits that are beyond time and space have already crossed and are sending us information so that we can send our astral energy into the future. And once we cross it, we will see the manifestation of the great astral synchronization in our shared reality. And with me, you will also say, I am Astral! Thanks for watching. Now you can tell me what you think. Are these synchronizations used by agents in the government to maximize the effects of the events? Are they natural synchronizations because the astral plane is automatically reflected in the physical world? Or is it all a meaningless coincidence? For my part, I believe that the vast majority is calculated by many of those involved. That is why I make these elaborate explanations. Many have already left their opinions, so I thank especially to the main commentators of the channel. And I wish you all a happy, great conjunction of 2020. Astral!